Celsius. Again, in the south, 24, 25, maybe 26 Celsius. Feeling cool on that south coast with that breeze, though. And that stiff wind will be a feature of the weather into Bank Holiday Monday as well. Again, most places will be dry with spells of sunshine.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 2 hours, I'll be keeping you company on television and radio with the stories that really matter across the country, and we have plenty coming up. After the energy price cap announcement yesterday, we'll be discussing how the cost of living crisis is not only putting a massive strain on your budget, but on our economy and indeed our political system too. And the 100,000 ghost children who should have gone back to school or be packing their satchels for a new term, where are they? I'll be asking the chair of the Education Select Committee, Robert Halfon. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of today's news. Here's Polly Middlehurst.
Alistair, thank you. Good afternoon. The top stories at midday. As you were just hearing then, the Chancellor has warned middle-income earners could be among those struggling to pay their energy bills this winter. Nadeem Zohawi says he's concerned about people who aren't on benefits, telling the Daily Telegraph newspaper those earning around £45,000 a year may need government support. That comes after Ofgem announced an 80% hike in the energy price cap to over £3,500 from October. The cost of living crisis will be a priority for the next Prime Minister. And the Conservative MP Robert Halfon told GB News Rishi Sunak has a proven track record for helping the country.
I do believe that his track record shows that when it counts, he does help with the cost of living. The government spent £37 billion. It's a huge amount of money, especially with the current spending pressures, to try and help people over the next few months. He acted properly when times were tough. If we didn't have the furlough scheme, my constituents would have become destitute. Our businesses would have closed.
Well, the Policy Director for the Centre for Social Justice, Joe Shalom, says he believes the current support package doesn't go far enough.
What we've been doing at the Centre for Social Justice is looking at the hit to incomes, particularly those on low incomes, over the autumn and winter period. And what we found is that even when taking into account the existing support package, which is hugely welcome in so many ways, we're still seeing considerable falls in the real incomes of those who are already struggling, frankly. Where we are now is a very, very different picture to where we were when the calculations were made about what needed to go into that package. And it's really urgent that we update our cost of living policy response.
Well, in other news today, police say silence is not an option as they appeal for yet more information on the shooting of Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool. The 9-year-old was killed in her own home on Monday night. A second man is being questioned after being arrested on suspicion of murder yesterday. Police also released videos showing another arrest with a 36-year-old man from the Huyton area who was detained on Thursday. They're urging people with names to come forward to help with the police investigation. The family of Harry Dunn say they miss him terribly 3 years after his death. The 19-year-old was killed when his motorbike collided with a car outside a US military base. American citizen Anne Sokoulas was charged with causing death by dangerous driving, but was allowed to leave the country because she had diplomatic immunity. A memorial ride is being held at the US Embassy in South London to mark the anniversary today. The government's announced a £56 billion plan to crack down on sewage spills. Under the proposals, water companies in the UK will face tough targets to minimise pollution. That comes after dozens of warnings were issued for beaches and swimming spots across England and Wales last week, following heavy rain that overwhelmed sewage systems. And motorists are facing a weekend of traffic chaos as they try to get away for the bank holiday. The AA has issued an amber warning with an estimated 15 million trips expected over the next couple of days. It's only the second time ever it's issued the alert, which is used to indicate traffic congestion. The president of the AA, Edmund King, shared his advice for those hoping to set off.
Prepare your car, check out things like your tyre pressures, your windscreen wiper fluid, your oil, check that all out. Check your route. You can get alternative routes. And one thing we're also saying, we find at the AA, when people break down, almost 40% of people don't really know where they are.
Meanwhile, drivers are also being hit by higher charges, with drop-off fees at airports rising significantly. The RAC found 16 of 22 major airports introduced or raised fees over the last 3 years. Stansted topped the table as the most expensive airport, charging £7 for up to 15 minutes. That's up from £4 for 10 minutes before the pandemic. The motoring body says drivers should do their research before heading to an airport to drop somebody off. And finally, a car that was once owned by Princess Diana is being auctioned today. The black Ford Escort RS Turbo was driven by the Princess from 1985 to 1988. Last June, another Ford Escort used by Diana sold for £52,000. Silverstone Auction says the vehicle's being offered with no reserve price. That's it. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Alistair.
Polly, thanks very much indeed. Once in a while, you get a collision of crises: economic, political and personal. Many will recall the financial crash of 2007-8, when the entire financial system went crazy. A building society here went bust, banks teetered on the brink around the world, billions had to be committed to stop the whole system imploding. The seemingly exponential surge in energy prices, prompted partly by the global recovery from COVID and compounded by the war in Ukraine, seems like another. Yesterday's announcement of a near doubling of the price cap, the sheer fear of folk as they try to figure out how they'll pay those bills come October, was palpable. The political reaction is ominous. Locked in a Tory leadership contest, neither of the candidates seems yet to have come up with the real answer to assuage the nerves of their party members, let alone the rest of us, voters, who have no say in the battle to determine who will be our next Prime Minister. The opposition parties toy with the old pre-Thatcher answers of state control, price freezes and even renationalisation. So what's on offer already by way of grants, aid and benefit boosts, and what's been hinted at down the road are but sticking plasters on a gaping wound. The 2-year price cap freeze, which would do nothing to slow the rise in global energy prices, would be a £100 billion make-do over 2 years. So, is there a better answer? Or is this one of those moments where, for now, there really is no answer? Perhaps you can outwit the experts. Do let me know. I'll be talking to a number of them, and I and they will be very keen to know. As always, we want to hear what you think. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk with any comments that you may have on the stories that we're covering today. We and I are also on Twitter and on Facebook. And I want to get the conversation started with a good friend of mine and this programme, Julian Jessup. Julian is an independent economist, but he has also worked in the past in the Treasury. Julian, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Is this potentially on a par with the financial crisis of 2007-8?
Well, actually, in many ways, I think it's worse than that, and also worse than the recession we just saw during the pandemic, because the key difference here is the impact on household budgets. We're facing a situation where many families are going to be unable to pay their energy bills, and indeed are facing huge pressures elsewhere in their budget, including food prices. So I think in terms of the welfare of ordinary people, ordinary families, this is potentially a lot worse than either financial crisis or the recent hit we had from the pandemic.
And immediately locks in the entire political screaming match, because those people, those household budgets, are also voters and are concerned. I noticed, and you and I had a social media exchange a little earlier, that what I call the economic textbook warriors are out in force today in the newspapers. Patrick Minford gives a brilliant interview to Simon Heffer in the Telegraph, and for those listening to our conversation on radio, that's what I'm holding up now with a picture of Minford there bang in the middle. But also the Chancellor, former Chancellor of the Exchequer and Tory leadership candidate himself, Rishi Sunak, puts pen to paper in The Times, taking an alternative view. Unless I've got it wrong, it boils down to the Truss plan of lower taxes, fewer levies and a run for growth has merit, but that's no longer a real answer, says her contender, Rishi Sunak. Who do you think is right?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think a lot of the old Treasury orthodoxy has to go out the window here. I mean, we're basically facing an enormous economic and social crisis. And in many ways, it's akin to a war. I mean, we are effectively fighting a war with Russia. It may not be a military war, but it's a war that's hitting household budgets through higher energy prices. So we frankly should be willing to throw almost as much money at this problem as we possibly can. Now, in terms of which of the two candidates has the better plan, I think I basically add them together. I think Rishi Sunak has emphasised the importance of providing more support for low-income households, and I think that should probably be the priority when dealing with the increase in energy bills in October. But we also need medium to longer-term plans, which I think should include broader tax cuts, a contingency plan for what happens if bills continue to rise next year, and also looking at the longer term structural problems in the energy market. So that's everything from the fact that we seem to be overly dependent on what happens to the gas price. We haven't invested enough in alternatives, and in many ways actually there's been too much government intervention here rather than too little.
I totally agree with that. One step back into that argument, though, where you say it's a mixture of the two, and therefore those direct grants, that direct aid, whether it's universal credit or 400 quid off your rates, however it works out, doesn't matter. Isn't the painful truth that the state, the United Kingdom PLC, as people call it, cannot and will not afford bailouts that would really make a difference to the vast majority of people? They just don't have the money.
Well, I think we saw during the pandemic that in practice the government can borrow an enormous amount of money on global markets if it needs to. It might be
but we've already borrowed enormous amounts of money because of coronavirus and furlough. I'm sorry, I butted in there, but we've already borrowed enormous amounts of money, historic levels of debt and a soaring deficit, and the proportion of GDP that the state takes now hovers around 50%. At some point, someone's got to say enough.
Well, this is a point actually that Patrick Minford made very well in the interview that you quoted earlier. I think it's important to distinguish between, what happens to borrowing in the short term and what happens to debt in the longer term. I think in the short term, the government can borrow a lot of money. And in a crisis like this, it's absolutely right to let the budget deficit take the strain. In the longer term, what matters is getting the overall level of debt down as a share of GDP, the size of the economy. But the key there is economic growth. And if you're sort of skimpy on borrowing now, and that just creates a bigger recession and more social problems, then it actually doesn't do any good for fiscal for the budget finances in the longer term. So in a sense, it's almost the fiscally responsible thing to do, to let the deficit take the strain, rather than obsess about 10 billion here or 20 billion there.
Yeah, which, to be fair to Truss's camp, is exactly what she said from the very, very beginning, is take a deep breath, take a bit of a gamble now, growth will look after it. Fingers crossed with that one, let's hope so. Final point, I got into a bit of an argument with one or two people when I said the idea of freezing the cap, freezing domestic UK energy prices was the economics and politics of the playground. Am I wrong or am I right?
Well, I'm not keen on the idea of freezing prices for all sorts of reasons. I mean, it does interfere with the market mechanism. It would, in practice, by the way, mean that most of the benefit goes to higher users of energy, who tend to be richer households. And also, I think it's better to top up people's incomes, because it's not just energy prices that are going up; it's other pressures on budgets. So there might be people who are poor, who, for whatever reason, have small energy bills, but are still struggling elsewhere. So I think the economically sound thing to do is to focus on targeted benefits. But this may change if some of the gloomy forecasts about what might happen to bills next year are proved right. Then I think at that point, no option should be left off the table. And maybe freezing the cap perhaps at the higher October level might still be a reasonable compromise.
Julian, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your wisdom and candour in answering those questions. Good to see you. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much indeed. Julian Jessup there, one of the top independent economists, giving his view that really the answer for you, me and the entire country may be to try and bolt together some of what Liz Truss is saying with some of what Rishi Sunak is saying, but not to worry too much about borrowing at the moment. Because ultimately, if those plans work, the economy will grow and recover, and lo and behold, magic darts, as they say. So that's got the ball rolling. Don't forget, if you agree or disagree with him or anything else that I've said, do get in touch. We genuinely want to hear what you have to say. Let's carry on the conversation now with another friend of mine. Became a friend when he appeared for the first time on the programme, and I was so impressed, I said to the team, I'd love to have him back. There he is. It's Malcolm Grimston, who is the Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Energy Policy and Technology at Imperial College. Good to see you again. We talked about the inadequacy of the regulatory regime last time you were on, both in context of energy but also water. Forget water just for a moment. There is no regulator for the oil and gas producers. And some people, ordinary folk, have been commenting left, right and centre, they're getting away with murder, making astronomical profits, paying huge salaries and massive dividends. Something is amiss.
Well, most of those companies are international giants who are earning money in many countries across the world. And if you just tax them on their UK bit of it, then they would shift investment to other parts of the world where they weren't getting taxed to that level. The government is talking about the way you would do it with oil and gas is probably you would increase the taxation around the permits to extract oil and gas from the North Sea. That's what's being talked about, and I think that will probably happen. But of course, the price cap's in the wrong place. The price cap is on the suppliers. We've already seen 30 of those go bust. Nobody's making money out of supplying electricity. It is, as you say, the producers, and it's very difficult to tax an international business where both capital and the product will flow to the area where it's going to make the most money.
Yeah. So literally, to play with a lovely cliche, but it's appropriate in this context, is to tax slightly higher those licenses to print money, i.e. if you want to open up a new field in the North Sea or even go fracking, if that gets the green light, it's going to cost you more to get into that primary level of the business than it used to.
That's right. But you do need also to be careful. There is a cycle to this. Centrica, which owns British Gas, for example, did not give a dividend to any of its consumers, any of its shareholders, between 2020 and 2022 because it wasn't making any money. For many years, oil and gas extraction was not the sort of place where smart money would go because international prices were low. And as Julian was saying a moment ago, you need prices to go up from time to time, because if they don't, you don't get investment in the next set of equipment and the next set of extraction facilities, which will be needed ultimately to bring the price down again. Because as with all major price increases, at the moment, supply is on the short side and demand is heavy.
I'm delighted that you were able to hear much, if not all, of what Julian had to say, because I want to put to you one of the questions I also put to him, because it is something of a cause célèbre out there amongst taxpayers, energy consumers and politicians, and that is whether you think freezing the price cap is daft. Julian said wrong now, but a time may come when it becomes right. What's your view?
We see the price cap was put in because some consumers, domestic consumers, were not shopping around. They were getting themselves stuck on the highest tariffs, which tended to be prepayment or the emergency rate that the companies would charge. And they were paying over the odds. And so the price cap was really to help those. The vast majority of us were on contracts way below the price cap, because a market is more effective at bringing prices down than a price cap. What a price cap does is, ultimately, it drives investment out of the system, and so you don't get the investment that's needed to increase supply and bring prices down in the long term. So I've been sceptical about, I could see the point with some consumers as to why a price cap, which affected perhaps 1 in 5 consumers, was sensible. But at the moment, it's not a price cap, it's the regulated price in the market.
Exactly.
You can't get deals below the price cap.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and much relief. So I hope people at home will bolt your answer together with Julian's, and there is great wisdom in both of those observations. Penultimate question, and it's the follow-up to that one. The other thing that anyone who's looked at economics, let alone you as an energy expert looking at economics, will know that a domestic price cap will do absolutely nothing, zero, zilch, to the input price of global energy, whether it's oil from Norway and the North Sea or gas from Russia when things perhaps, God willing, calm down. It's all output prices. It's not input prices, and they are what is killing us right now.
That's absolutely right. In fact, you can argue that the price cap has been counterproductive, because those 30-odd supply companies that went bust went bankrupt because the price cap did not allow them to pass on the cost of the raw energy that they were buying, that they were then supplying to their customers. And so they had to go bankrupt. If you can't charge your customers more than it's actually costing you to run the business, then by definition you go bankrupt. This happened massively in California in 2000, 2001. It's nothing new, and we should have known that this was a possible outcome, and we didn't. Yeah. One of the big criticisms of Ofgem was it let a lot of suppliers into the market who did not have the financial robustness to carry themselves through this sort of problem. And the estimate is that alone may have cost consumers something like £3 billion.
Ouch. Final question, and it nods back to that crucial analysis you gave of the economics and politics of price caps. Do you think that what we are seeing now is quite a profound rerun of the market forces versus state control drama?
I'm not sure that this particularly is about market forces. The knee-jerk response about nationalisation, I just don't think is really serious at the moment towards this. Markets work when they're allowed, either the state can run it or the market has to be given the freedom to make a large amount of money from time to time that it then invests, because the cure to high prices is high prices. And if the government is sort of straddling those two, so it's more or less a market, but it's intervening to make sure that these companies don't make that amount of money that they can then invest, that's when you start getting the worst of both worlds. And that's what I'm afraid of at the moment. Sustained high prices, but that money not going into investment to bring those prices down.
Well, if we're not having that debate now, you and I totally agree, and I think Jessup did as well, that we better get on with it pretty damn quickly. Malcolm, great to see you again, and thanks for accepting our invitation for a second time. I look forward to the third time very much indeed. Have a great weekend. Thank you. That's Malcolm Grimston, Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Energy Policy and Technology at Imperial College. Finally, in this segment, before we take a break, and then we'll hear what some of you think, I'm delighted to be joined by Tony Jordan. There he is. Tony's a consultant at Utility Market Experts. Great to see you, Tony. Two steps back. Has the energy market ground to a halt, in effect, as I think the two previous guests were hinting at was a real worry? Or can still folk do anything in the form of shopping around and trying to find a better deal anywhere?
Sadly, for consumers, the market is pretty dry on that front. We see the price cap being, unfortunately, the best price available to consumers in the market, and that has been the case for quite some months now.
You told GBNews, not this programme, I'm sad to say, but one of my colleagues you were being interviewed by, and you said, and the team told me this, and I said, wow, that's gold dust. You thought there was a key role for the government to calm markets. What particularly would you like them to try and do? The current government, or the one that's going to be formed either by Liz or Rishi in literally a matter of days?
Well, one thing's for sure is I would not want to be in the new Prime Minister's shoes in a week or so's time. They have an impossible task now. To come up with a solution that's going to fix this problem is virtually impossible. We've talked about removing green levies, reducing or zeroing VAT. They're going to be a drop in the ocean in value compared to where the price cap has now been announced at just over £3,500. Freezing the price cap is another proposal, but the reality is, although that might fix some of the domestic cost, it's only about 30% of the total demand in the UK. So 70% of the market, which are business consumers, don't have the protection from this. And actually, if you've got a buyer in the market that has the mandate to buy at any cost, we could actually drive up prices even higher than where they are now for those business consumers.
Well, I would encourage you to, when we finish this interview, if you've got time, carry on watching the programme, because we've got a former chair of the Federation of Small Businesses coming up on the programme, making exactly that point. And the current chair has written a brilliant article in today's Daily Mail, well worth reading. You're absolutely right. Businesses out there exposed and in deep doo-doo. As a student of these things and a keen observer of the marketplace, do you agree with me that one of the greatest single difficulties is that the state, UK PLC, simply can't and won't afford bailouts that would really make a difference to everybody? Nadeem Zar, we're talking about those on 45 grand a year. Everyone else talking about the most hard-pressed, the poorest. The state can't solve it for everyone, just not on.
No, and I think Julian alluded to that there's going to be an imbalance between that money reaching the right people. The £400, for example, that's going to be applied monthly throughout the winter at £66, £67 a month. That's going to reach everybody, whether you are on the lowest income or indeed the highest. So targeted relief is very difficult to deliver.
The final point, have you thought of anything else as a consultant and observer that either Liz or Rishi hasn't thought of, or that I haven't asked either you or Julian or Malcolm? Because I really am genuinely scratching my head, and we're getting people coming in via email and tweet saying, oh, do the nationalisation bit, do the bailout bit and what have you. But is there anything fresh out there that we haven't thought of?
Not to my mind at the moment. I think we're in a really, really difficult place. It has been creeping up on us for some time. Sadly, we're predicting that the October price cap that's just been announced at just over £3,500 is going to be probably the lowest number that we'll see for some time. We're predicting some awful numbers into 2023. So I think the analysts, Auxilione, which I represent, and others out there are all aligned in that this is far from over just yet. So there needs to be some sizable thinking and to make sure, obviously, that we don't damage something by fixing something somewhere else along the chain.
It's a brutal note to end on, but it ties in exactly with my analysis right at the top of the programme. And I prefer to have guests who are honest, even if that truth is a bit painful to take. Tony, great to see you again. Thank you very much indeed. Keep in touch and love to talk to you again anytime. Tony Jordan there, consultant at the Utility Market Experts. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've lots more coming up on today's programme. It's been 3 years since the teenager Harry Dunn was killed when a car crashed into him and his motorbike outside a United States military base located in the United Kingdom. A memorial motorbike ride is taking place outside the US Embassy in London today to mark that anniversary. And our reporter Alice Porter is there. That's coming up next. But first, let's bring you right up to date with the weather.
So looking ahead then to this afternoon, in the UK is looking pretty much like this. Showery for many. Some bright or sunny spells, though, in between those showers. Let's home in on the detail. Starting off in northern Scotland, a few showers around, but those fairly scattered. Western parts of Scotland may have fewer showers with more sunshine. Far eastern parts of Northern Ireland should still largely be fine around mid-afternoon. Further west, clouds spilling in with a little rain. Scattered showers developing across northwest England. Most of those light, although watch out for a few heavier bursts at times. Sunny spells, though, between the showers. And a scattering of showers also likely across Wales, although here they will be less frequent. Still the chance of a few heavy showers in Wales over hills and mountains. And a similar picture further east around the Midlands. Here, let's expect some sunny breaks, then a scattering of showers developing. Temperatures in the mid-20s, feeling pleasant though in the sunshine. And in East Anglia, a different story. Sunshine limited for some, with the odd thick cloud lingering, although it will be drier and less showers developing. Towards the Solent, an afternoon of sunny spells and a few showers, similar to elsewhere. Showers mostly light, but some heavier ones are possible. So those showers dying out this evening, a dry night for most of us, though rain in the far northwest. And that's how the showery weather is shaping up for the UK today.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The headlines at just after 12:30 on GB News. The Chancellor has been warning middle-income earners could struggle to pay their energy bills this winter, saying he's concerned about those who aren't on benefits. Speaking to the Daily Telegraph newspaper, Nadeem Zahawi said people earning around £45,000 a year may need government support. That comes after Ofgem announced an 80% hike in the energy price cap to over £3,500 from October. Police investigating the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool say silence is not an option. They're appealing for more help now from the public. That's after they released a video showing a man being arrested in the Highton area on suspicion of murder. A second man who was detained yesterday is also being questioned. A memorial ride is being held at the US Embassy in London, marking the 3rd anniversary of the death of Harry Dunn. The 19-year-old was killed when his motorbike collided with a car, which was allegedly being driven on the wrong side of the road. American Anne Sakoulas was charged with causing death by dangerous driving, but was allowed to leave the country because she had diplomatic immunity. Harry's family say they still miss him terribly. And motorists are facing traffic chaos over this bank holiday weekend, with the AA issuing an amber warning. An estimated 15 million trips are expected over the next couple of days, and it's only the second time the AA has issued such an alert, indicating heavy traffic congestion. And a car that was once owned by Princess Diana is being auctioned. The black Ford Escort RS Turbo was driven by the Princess from 1985 to 1988. Last June, another Ford Escort used by Diana sold for $52,000. Silverstone Auctions says the vehicle's being offered with no reserve price. You're up to date on GB News. Now back to Alistair.
Polly, thank you. A memorial motorcycle ride's taking place outside the United States Embassy in London today to mark the 3rd anniversary of Harry Dunn's death. US citizen Anne Sakoulas is accused of causing that death of the 19-year-old by dangerous driving following a fatal crash in Northamptonshire. But she has never stood trial in the United Kingdom. London reporter Alice Porter joins us now from outside the US Embassy. What is lying behind you there says it all. This is going to be a big event for not only the family but for the supporters of poor Harry.
Absolutely. I mean, this has been a situation that's been going on for 3 years now, with very much the family fighting for justice and fighting for Anna Sakoulas to stand trial. She was meant to stand trial actually earlier in the year in January. She was going to appear via a video link at Westminster Magistrates Court. That didn't happen. We understand that there are ongoing discussions with the Crown Prosecution Service and US authorities to make sure that she stands trial. But, you know, of course, amongst all of this sort of wranglings between the US and the UK that's become somewhat of a diplomatic spat over the last few years, it's important to stress that at the heart of this is a family and friends who very regularly gather together to support the family, and they're very much here outside the US Embassy to try and put pressure on the government to try and get this issue resolved. And I'm joined here by Zach Veldkamp, who was in fact a friend of Harry Dunn. So just tell me first a little bit, what are your memories of him? Because I think it's important to sort of talk about that while we're here today.
Yeah, so Harry obviously loved travelling, so always up and down from the coast, spending as much time at the beach, Durdle Doors, all the lovely coastal paths and routes that he loved to take. We used to hang out a lot together, whether it was in the car, following on his motorbike. It was a lot of driving, really. We had many good times out on the road together, a lot of touring. It was quite a bit.
And you've got a tattoo to sort of mark the ongoing campaign, really, to try and provide justice for Harry Dunn. And so tell me about sort of the protest that's taking place today outside the embassy.
So just a nice peaceful protest just to show that we are still present and that we will not forget him. We will continue every year until we get the justice that we and he deserve, of course, for his family as well as himself.
Well, look, thank you very much for speaking to me there. I have been having a look over the last few years and the campaign to have Anna Sakoulas stand trial. And for those of you who aren't so familiar with the case, please do watch this piece now.
On the 27th of August 2019, Harry Dunn was riding his motorbike to meet his father. He never made it. The bike collided with a car and he was killed. The car was driven by an American, Anna Sakoulis, who had just left a US base, where her husband worked for the CIA. Police weren't able to investigate because she flew home to the US, claiming diplomatic immunity. The result was a transatlantic row, with Harry Dunn's parents fighting for Anne Sakoulis to stand trial in the UK.
She needs to just do the right thing and just come back and face what she's done, face us as a broken family, face our UK system.
They went to the US to raise awareness of the case and had a meeting with President Trump.
The President was very graceful and spoke very well to us. He listened to Charlotte very well. She spoke excellent to him and he was understanding. And I think he generally will look to try and resolve this in a way to help us.
But when the Crown Prosecution Service announced that Mrs. Sakoulis would be charged with causing death by dangerous driving, the US refused the extradition request. In December 2021, it was announced that Anna Sakoulis would face a virtual trial before a UK court, although discussions between her legal team and the CPS are still ongoing. 3 years on from his death, Harry Dunn's family say they'll continue to fight for justice for their son. Alice Porter, GB News.
Well, the bikers have been here outside the US Embassy, very much making a clear statement to both the US Embassy and the British government, hoping that there could be some resolution, as it's 3 years today that Harry Dunn was sadly killed.
Alice, thank you very much indeed, and we'll keep in touch. I know you'll be there for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you. Alice Porter there, our London reporter. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, and we've plenty more still to come this afternoon, including a new report suggesting that 100,000 children have disappeared from attending school following the pandemic, the so-called ghost children. But what's happened to them, and what can we do to get them back into class? That right after this break.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome back. It's 20 to 1 and you're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News TV and radio. Now, you've already been getting in touch about one of our stories that I mentioned last night, that of ghost children in education. Carol says, when I was at school, if children didn't attend, the family were paid a visit by the school authorities. Rachel says, I agree, it's a big concern. I'm a teacher. During lockdown, I was extremely worried for vulnerable kids, isolated from support. Many of them are now lost. Unions should have focused on this. Instead, they tried to keep the schools closed. I think, to be fair, Rachel, that was more the government than it was the unions, but let's leave that one there. As indeed you did. You left the union. That's a matter for you, Rachel. Thanks. Finally, Megan asks, what are the local authorities doing? There was a time when homeschoolers had to notify and give details of education provision. Some even sent education, otherwise inspectors, for a home visit. So that's some of your thoughts to get the conversation going. Keep them coming, particularly after you hear from my next guest. Back to school season is upon us. Scottish and Northern Irish children are already in their classrooms, while others are literally days away from the big return to school. Bruised and battered by the aftermath of COVID, some wincing from those GCSE results have perhaps spoiled matters for them. It isn't going to be the happiest days of their lives, but at least they're going back. There's also a real problem for heads, two major problems. The majority of state schools face a year of deficit, simply not enough money to do their job as they would want to. And the other has, as I say, been even more worrying. It is what the chair of the Education Select Committee, Robert Halfon MP, calls the problem of ghost children, getting on for 100,000 young people who seem to have slipped off the radar. And there he is right now. Robert, it's always a pleasure to see you. I'm going to reverse that about the funding. If we've got time, we'll come to that as well. But to cut straight to the chase on the ghost children, I found it literally jaw-dropping when I heard you talking about it and then read the report. How's it happened? Who are they? And why has it been allowed to happen?
Well, I've been raising this with the government since the summer of 2021, and I coined this very sad term, the ghost children, because I was disturbed. Even last summer, there was 100,000 children who are missing from the school rolls completely. No one knows where those children are. Obviously, lockdown is a substantial cause of this when schools shut for most pupils. It isn't just those ghost children, sadly. We also know there's 1.7 million persistently absent children. That's increased by a separate 100,000. We've just had exam results. Year 11 pupils missed an average of 11% of morning and afternoon sessions over the last academic year. 5% of pupils were severely absent from September to May this year. And the Centre for Social Justice, that is author of a lot of this work, suggests that 13,000 children in critical exam years were severely absent in the autumn term of 2020. In 800 schools across the United Kingdom, in mostly disadvantaged areas, you've got the equivalent of whole classrooms missing. That's like out of a sci-fi horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's unacceptable. And I've been urging the government to take action on this for a very, very long time.
All right, let me butt in, Robert, there. Because from my social media, two thoughts are very obvious to a lot of people. One is, where are the social services and all of this? Because, you're talking about minors, you're talking about people who should be somewhere and they are not there. But the other side of that coin is, where are the parents and the guardians in this? If my kids didn't go to school and I didn't know where they were, I would have totally failed in my duties and responsibilities.
Well, you're right. And we know, sadly, that some of these children have been joining county line gangs. Some are exposed to online harms. Some are facing other safeguarding hazards. What I believe should happen, I was urging the government to do and spoke in a number of debates on this, on education, in the House of Commons, was for them to use some of the catch-up fund money to appoint school attendance officers to go and work with the families to get these children back into school. We know examples of very good schools like Felton Reach Academy in London that have been doing this for a long time. And the question is, why is it that some schools have incredibly high attendance records and yet other schools are missing these children? But as I say, it's not just the 100,000 ghost children. There's also the problem of 1.7 million persistently absent children. And those children schools actually do know about.
You've twice said perfectly reasonably that you've been putting pressure on whoever the Secretary of State for Education is, James Cleverly at the moment, but we've had one or two in recent months and years, as you know better than anybody else. But I want to be clear on one thing before I move it on. This is essentially and overwhelmingly the responsibility of parents we've dealt with, but local authorities, what used to be called the local education authorities, they still run the schools, they still have the committees. Wherever the money comes from, it is they who should be out there on the streets, knocking on doors, saying, come on, the kids should be at school.
Well, I do think it's a responsibility of local authorities, the schools and families, as you rightly have mentioned. And what I think is not only should the Secretary of State appoint these attendance officers, but he should have a dashboard in his office, in the Department of Education, of every school, every local authority, which flashes up where there are severe problems in disadvantaged areas where these children are not going to school. And the government should work with the local authorities to send in task forces to make sure to get these children back into school. There should also be a social media campaign to work with the parents and to get these children back into school. This should be a priority for the incoming Secretary of State. We keep saying we want all children back in September, yet very little is being done to get these children back into school.
Absolutely. Final point, you talked about a social media campaign. You will be aware that there are a couple of really quite articulate, grown-up, sensible social media campaigns running at the moment in these kind of head teacher chat rooms that exist, that I know my daughter and you have discussed the importance of them for getting the arguments out there. And the overwhelming concern that they have is that they will begin this school term / year short of money, heading for deficit.
Yes, I mean, just to take the example, we've got schools in my local constituency that are spending many thousands of pounds on energy bills. So what does that mean? Less support staff, less money for attendance officers, which we've just been discussing to get the kids back into school. FE colleges, further education, which I care deeply about. I've been told by the Association of Colleges that many of these colleges are facing a 300% increase in their energy bills. I mean, this is ridiculous, and something needs to be done about it. I propose that there should be a number of special tariffs, a public service, urgent public service tariff, so that these increase in bills would be waylaid for essential public services. Because if you have schools spending all their money on energy bills, schools and colleges spending all their money on energy bills rather than frontline services, we're not going to get these children learning and get them climbing that vital education ladder of opportunity.
Absolutely. Robert, great to see you. Thanks for breaking into the weekend to talk to us. I know you spoke to GBNews earlier about other matters, so I'm not going to do the gotcha moment on leadership. You've done that already and you've given your answer. So I just didn't want people at home to think, I'm not going to ask him because he's a friend of mine. Great to talk to you about what really matters to me and you, and that's education, ghost children, and the state getting its finger out and finding those kids and keeping them safe and getting them educated. Have a great weekend, Robert. Good to see you always. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Robert Halfon there, the chairman of the Education Select Committee. Chris McGovern, I hope, was listening to that, and he joins me now. Chris is the campaign chair of the group Real Education, and importantly, he himself is a former head. I'm going to reverse the order with you as well, because I do want to talk about ghost children. But what Robert ended there with about the funding crisis in schools is real and tangible. All of those things that you believe passionately in pedagogy and teaching and learning and the rest of it are as nothing if heads and teachers haven't got the beer vouchers to do it with.
Well, I don't agree with you there, I'm afraid. If you look at the spending on education between 1953 and 2010, according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, we had a 900% increase in real terms. So we do spend more than most countries in the world. There are only 2 or 3 countries around the globe who spend more per head than we do. I think we need to ask the question, why is education in England and Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland so expensive? How can they do it on a tiny bit of that? In Vietnam, a developing country, for example, spend about 9-10% of what we spend, are much more successful. So we need to look at that. Of course, there's a current crisis over energy bills. We know that. But I'm afraid if we say it's about money, it isn't about money. It's about how we teach the children. And we have methods in this country which are incredibly expensive and incredibly useless, which is why we're falling further and further behind. We're about 3 years
Is
behind.
that, hang on, totally, and I love someone who disagrees with me so eloquently and so forcefully, but are you saying, therefore, that all of those teachers on social media, in those chat rooms, what have you, saying, oh, we're around, it is they who should look to their souls and look to their hearts as to how they run those schools, or is it government and local authorities saying, you've got to do it this way, you've got to do it that way, and that's just too expensive? Which of those two is it?
Look, the majority of staff in schools are not teachers, and many viewers will be surprised by that. If you go into any primary school in the country, what you will see is children sitting around tables, half of them with their backs to the teacher. And that system only runs because we have classroom assistants, 2 or 3 classroom assistants per room. It's incredibly expensive. There's plenty of money in the UK education system, but we have a system for teaching which is unrecognisable if you go to somewhere like Shanghai. How is it that in Shanghai, according to the OECD, the international number crunchers, the children of the street cleaners outperform the average of our best schools, our best? We're looking today at the gulf between the north and the south sometimes, London and the rest. Well, no, the real gulf in education is between London and Singapore. That's about 3 years. That's massive. We need to learn the lessons on what's going on in those countries. And in those countries, they have a more traditional approach to teaching. All the children face in the front, quite large classes, more didactic, more teacher-led. We've got to look at how we teach the children. Then maybe kids would turn up to school. I took over a failing school not so long ago, turned it around, took it out of special measures. But we had to feed the children. We had to give the children uniforms. We had parents at the gate fighting each other. This wasn't easy to do. And therefore, there are huge social problems. And don't forget, the parents themselves, many of them in these poorer homes, are illiterate. They're victims of the education system, so they don't value it. Want to educate parents, get them back to literacy and numeracy. So, Robert spoke very eloquently, Robert Halfon, but there's much more to it. And I don't think politicians understand education. They simply don't get the idea. They don't get it.
Well, very few of them are in office long enough to even read into it. I think you've got a really strong point there. Fingers crossed for whoever wins the leadership and goes in there. We've got about, I think, 2 minutes left, but I was thrilled to hear everything that you said up to that point about the funding crisis and methodology. But finally, this issue of ghost children, and you kind of maybe hinted it out there that you've got mums and dads who tragically don't care. The ones who are fighting at your school gate and, as you said, many are illiterate and what have you. Is there a solution to these ghost children other than simply making the offer in school more attractive and more useful to them?
We have to make schools useful to them. According to a recent survey by a travel company, 2/3 of parents will be happy to take their children out of school, pay the fine, to take them on holiday. We don't value education enough. Part of the reason is schools aren't doing well enough, but actually we do have to educate parents. When people fail, they tend not to be interested. So we have to have these children from poorer backgrounds succeeding. It's no excuse to say they're from poorer backgrounds. If they can succeed in poor countries like Vietnam, I mentioned that as an example, they can succeed in our poorer areas. There are no excuses for failure. And if children knew they were going to succeed, then they would turn up at school and their parents would make sure they did. There's not enough faith in our education system. You can see why, because look at it. It's in a mess.
Final point, and it's just crossed my mind when you were saying earlier on about comparisons with Vietnam and Singapore. Isn't it intriguing that countries like China and Saudi Arabia are cutting deals with private schools in this country to set up shop over there because they like what we do and how we do it in that sector?
Yeah, there's a prestige with our private schools. They're setting up private schools over there. That is true. So we have a good export in that sense, that they are prestigious. They like the prestige. Some of our private schools are excellent, but don't forget, the children at the posh private schools are way behind what they're achieving in Singapore and what they're achieving in South Korea and so forth. There's still the problem. But in terms of what the extracurricular activities going on at private school, they're outstanding. And of course, it's a high-pressure system in some of these Asian countries. But don't forget, we've got the unhappiest. We're top of one league table in the world. We've got the unhappiest children in the world. And that's pretty damning, isn't it? We hear that time and time again. So never mind the problems in South Korea and all the pressures. We've got the unhappiest children. We've got to get around all that. And what we want most of all are inspiring teachers and quality teaching. And if that means paying more, pay them more. But you don't need so many classroom assistants. You need some, not so many.
Perfect note to end on, and I agree with every syllable of it. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Chris. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us, and have a great weekend. Chris McGovern there, putting it straight, putting it frankly, the campaign chair of Real Education. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've lots more coming up in the second hour of our programme this afternoon. More on the big story, energy crisis and the energy price cap. Plus, Good Causes makes a return with a very special edition, personal to me. All of that to come, but first let's bring you up to date with the weekend weather.
So looking ahead then to this afternoon in the UK is looking pretty much like this. Showery for many. Some bright or sunny spells though in between those showers. Let's home in on the detail. Starting off in northern Scotland, a few showers around, but those fairly scattered. Western parts of Scotland may have fewer showers with more sunshine. Far eastern parts of Northern Ireland should still largely be fine around mid-afternoon. Further west, clouds spilling in with a little rain. Scattered showers developing across northwest England. Most of those light, although watch out for a few heavier bursts at times. Sunny spells, though, between the showers. And a scattering of showers also likely across Wales, although here they will be less frequent. Still the chance of a few heavy showers in Wales over hills and mountains. And a similar picture further east around the Midlands. Here, let's expect some sunny breaks, then a scattering of showers developing. Temperatures in the mid-20s, feeling pleasant though in the sunshine. And in East Anglia, a different story. Sunshine limited for some with the odd thick cloud lingering, although it will be drier and less showers developing. Towards the Solent, an afternoon of sunny spells and a few showers, similar to elsewhere. Showers mostly light, but some heavier ones are possible. So those showers dying out this evening, a dry night for most of us, though rain in the far northwest. And that's how the showery weather is shaping up for the UK today.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome if you've just joined us. Hello and thanks for being with us since noon if you have. What is it? It's just coming up to 1 minute past 1 and I'm Alastair Stewart. We are into our last hour of the programme. We'll be keeping you company here on TV and radio with plenty more still to come, including more on our top discussion on the energy cap and whether there are any other answers and solutions out there. What can be done to alleviate the strain on our finances, and how can small business owners prepare for an expected winter of discontent after yet another energy price cap rise? All of that to come, but let's bring you right up to date with the news so far today. Here's Polly Middlehurst.
Alistair, thank you. Good afternoon to you. The news at 1 minute after 1. The Chancellor has warned middle-income earners could be among those struggling to pay their energy bills this winter. Nadeem Zahawi says he's concerned about people who aren't on benefits, telling the Daily Telegraph newspaper those earning around £45,000 a year may need government assistance. That's after Ofgem announced an 80% hike in the energy price cap to over £3,500 from October. The cost of living crisis will be a priority for the next Prime Minister, and the Conservative MP Robert Halfon told GB News Rishi Sunak has a proven track record of helping the country.
I do believe that his track record shows that when it counts, he does help with the cost of living. The government spent £37 billion. It's a huge amount of money, especially with the current spending pressures, to try and help people over the next few months. He acted properly when times were tough. If we didn't have the furlough scheme, my constituents would have become destitute. Our businesses would have closed.
And the policy director of the Centre for Social Justice, Joe Shallam, says he believes the current support package doesn't go far enough.
What we've been doing at the Centre for Social Justice is looking at the hit to incomes, particularly those on low incomes, over the autumn and winter period. And what we found is that even when taking into account the existing support package, which is hugely welcome in so many ways, we're still seeing considerable falls in the real incomes of those who are already struggling, frankly. Where we are now is a very, very different picture to where we were when the calculations were made about what needed to go into that package. And it's really urgent that we update our cost of living policy response.
Well, in other news today, police are saying silence is not an option as they appeal for more information on the shooting of Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool. The 9-year-old was killed in her own home on Monday evening. A second man is now being questioned after being arrested on suspicion of murder yesterday. And police have released videos showing another arrest with a 36-year-old man from the Huyton area of the city detained on Thursday. They're urging anyone with any information to come forward and help the investigation. Now, 3 years after he was killed in a crash, the family of Harry Dunn say they miss him terribly. A memorial ride has been staged at the US Embassy in London to mark the anniversary of his death. The 19-year-old was killed when his motorbike collided with a car which was allegedly being driven on the wrong side of the road. American Anne Sokoulas was charged with causing death by dangerous driving, but was allowed to leave the country because she had diplomatic immunity. Harry's family and friends are calling for justice. The government's announced a £56 billion plan to track down on sewage spills. Under the proposals, water companies in the UK will face tough targets to minimise pollution. That's after dozens of warnings were issued for beaches and swimming spots across England and Wales last week, following heavy rain that overwhelmed the sewage systems. And motorists are facing a weekend of traffic chaos as they try to get away for the bank holiday. The AA issuing an amber warning with an estimated 15 million trips expected over the next couple of days. It's only the second time ever the AA has issued such an alert, which is used to indicate traffic congestion. The president of the organisation, Edmund King, shared his advice for those setting off.
Prepare your car, check out things like your tyre pressures, your windscreen wiper fluid, your oil, check that all out. Check your route. You can get alternative routes. And one thing we're also saying, we find at the AA, when people break down, almost 40% of people don't really know where they are.
Meanwhile, drivers are also being hit by higher charges, with drop-off fees rising significantly at airports. The RAC found 16 of 22 major airports introduced or raised fees over the last 3 years. Stansted topped the table as the most expensive, charging £7 for up to 15 minutes. That's up from £4 for 10 minutes before the pandemic. The motoring body says drivers should do their research before choosing an airport. Now, a car that was once owned by Princess Diana is being auctioned today. The black Ford Escort RS Turbo was driven by the Princess from 1985 to 1988. Last June, another Ford Escort used by Diana sold for £52,000. Silverstone Auctions says the vehicle's being offered with no reserve price. That's it. You're up to date. More news as it happens. Now back to Alistair.
Polly, thanks very much indeed. Yesterday's announcement of a near doubling of the price cap will undoubtedly have increased fears of individuals and families. But households are not the only ones who have to face that hit. According to the Federation of Small Businesses, gas bills have risen by 424% for them, whilst electricity has risen by 349% since February 2021. Many firms will be looking to negotiate electricity and gas contracts that expire in October as two-year fixed-price supply deals come to an end. Now, unlike households, companies do not have a cap on their energy bills, leaving them vulnerable to wholesale gas markets. So what will it mean for the future of small businesses? Before I get to my next guest, I just want to give him a hint of what you out there are already feeling. Nigel says, and there's a theme here to the first two, energy costs, what to do about it? It's cause and effect. The cause is Putin. Destroy Putin and the problem will go away. Bit dramatic, but actually, I think, Nigel, you've got a real point there, because that's where so many of the difficulties face us. And Frederick is on a similar theme. The latest crisis has clearly highlighted the incompetence of our governments going back many years in allowing Putin to manipulate us. Do I believe a new government will be any more competent? Sadly not. And finally, Jeffrey, we have to borrow whatever it takes to tide people over this year and possibly next. If we don't, it'll create its own reaction to events. People won't eat, won't have heating, and could die, as the NHS is already unfit to cope right now. That's why we have to. So there's some of those thoughts. Listening to that, and I'm delighted to say joining me live now is Mike Cherry, the former national chair of the Confederation of Small Businesses and himself director of a family business, WH Mason and Sons Limited, one of the largest manufacturers of cask closures. What Jeffrey said there is absolutely right as far as you and I as individual citizens and him and everybody else are concerned. But as far as the small business sector is concerned, you are much more on your own.
We are indeed, Alistair. And I think one point to make very clear is that for a long time, the Federation of Small Businesses have asked successive governments, going right back over 20 years or more, for sustainable, secure and affordable energy for small businesses and businesses, certainly in high intense use ones like the ceramics and steel and others. And this just hasn't been delivered. So fundamentally, the government has got to sort this out medium term. Short term, though, businesses are already facing inflationary busting raw material increases, in some cases 30% or more. That is also unsustainable. And when you hear from the FSB their latest figures on the multiplier, that multiplier of 3 or 4 times seems to almost be a minimum that businesses are now having to try and find when they come to renew their electricity or gas prices coming up in the autumn. That is clearly unsustainable. Businesses cannot either absorb that, and they certainly can't pass those increases on. And I think this is where the whole system has fundamentally failed businesses. We know what a lot of the problems are, but short term, clearly government has got to step in. We can reduce VAT very simply, very easily. That can be done overnight. We can also make sure that businesses are no longer being faced with these upfront costs, like the increase in national insurance. Surely it's ridiculous that a policy that was only announced earlier this year has now had to be backtracked on with grants or support coming out to help businesses. And let's not forget, that's now over 15% for every business who employs somebody.
And very much on the agenda. I can't call the Tory election because it's still running, but certainly the front runner at the moment would echo a lot of what you've said there. Although to be fair on VAT, so would Mr. Sunak do the same. But to be crystal clear, And it's a really important point, because people who are kind enough to watch this programme do not like people who just walk around the whole time with their cap saying, gimme, 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 gimme. What you're saying there is that the cost to the government would be opportunity cost, i.e. cut VAT for the time being, cut business rates, things like that perhaps, so that you don't actually want a huge grant from the government, you just want the regime changed so that your business and other businesses can continue to thrive. That's a big difference.
I think that's one of the most important things. And if you look back at the support that many businesses had to utilise during the COVID pandemic, we had the furlough scheme, but there are only the high street businesses that actually got the grants at that time. And there are thousands of businesses in the supply chains that got none of that support whatsoever. So if the government and politicians and the media are talking about grants or support for small businesses in the hospitality, leisure sector, it's not just those high street businesses. It is the whole of that supply chain that will have to be looked at in the round in the short term to help them through this period. And certainly as a business, we are trying to build up our stock so that if there are problems over the winter months, we at least know that we've got the stock to supply our customers with.
And people who know about these things always stress, although we know the huge multinational high street brands, in terms of wealth creation in this country and employment, the small and medium enterprise sector, the small businesses, are the lifeblood of this economy. If they get screwed over, the economy gets screwed over.
It does. And I mean, the whole economy is based on consumer spending. So first and foremost, obviously, consumers have to be supported through this difficult period in some way. And clearly, businesses also need the support, because if businesses go under, and that's already coming through, then you are not going to have the jobs that pay the wages that enable the people to actually pay their bills that are increasing dramatically, as we saw with the announcement only yesterday on the increase in the cap. So there's fundamentally something that has to be sorted out medium term. And let's get back to sustainable, secure and affordable energy, for goodness sake.
Yeah. A final point, and I mentioned this to one of my other guests earlier, your successor as chair of the Federation, Martin McTague, has written a really good piece here in the Mail. And to me, the standout point, and I'd like your comment, both as you, the former chair, but also a director of your own business, Martin says 40%, nearly half of small businesses have less than 3 months' cash in hand, what they need to pay their staff, to pay their bills, to buy in raw materials. 3 months cash.
That actually surprises me. It's a little bit higher than I would have anticipated, but it's a fact from our recent survey. So, this is a problem that has been exacerbated certainly by COVID. It was apparent during the COVID that businesses were running out of cash. And with the sort of increases, businesses, cash is king, as we all know. They're going to struggle unless they can get some support.
Mike, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. And just in case people thought I was laughing wrongly, I was laughing at the fact you said you were surprised it was that figure, and clearly feared that it might have been worse. Mike Cherry, thank you very much indeed. Have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us. Mike there, the former chair of the Confederation of Small Businesses. And do look around. If you want to know what it's really like at the front line of running a small business, you can listen to that interview again on YouTube, or get hold of a copy of the Mail and read Martin McTague's piece there. Put them together and it really does paint a grown-up picture of concern. Now, listening to that conversation, I am absolutely thrilled to bits, because we like going to the front line, to the coalfaces. Paula Billingsley. Now, Paula is the co-owner of the Liverpool pub, surprise, surprise, in Liverpool. Paula, thank you so much for breaking off. It must be a very busy time for you. I hope you've got great people doing the job of work. Just tell me bluntly, what does it feel like right now with you employing people to work behind the bar, paying the bills to the brewery, trying to offer sarnies and pies and whatever else you do? What's it like at the front line right now, Paula?
It's very depressing at the moment. It's we're working harder and just trying everything we can to keep the prices down, to keep our customers happy. But I've got to say, we've had peaks and troughs all in the 30 years we've been there. And this just feels like it's a complete trough that we're going to have difficulty getting out of.
Mike was saying just a moment ago, and I don't know whether you were able to hear it, I hope you were, but if not, let me just say it, that he didn't necessarily want a big grant from the government to help out, but a reduction in VAT, a reduction in business rate and national insurance might help, i.e. reduce your costs rather than chucking cash at you. Would that do the trick, Paula?
It would certainly help, and I do agree with most of what he said, that, you know, we've had cash during COVID. We got the grants, but we got big grants because we've got big overheads. We're in Liverpool city centre. So all that did was seeing us through the pandemic. None of that's left. What we really need is something put in place, a reduction in our fixed costs that will help us.
And although, as I said, that's an opportunity cost to the government, because if they do cut your VAT, then they don't get the revenue. But hey, it keeps the pub going, it keeps people working, and there's a really big upside to that. The final point, Paula, and my team said this is a really interesting observation given your overall introduction to the programme. You told the team that you remember that 2007-8 financial crisis.
Yeah.
Does this feel a little bit easier, or is it worse?
Worse, most definitely worse. Because even in the 2007-2008 crisis, we still had peaks, that got us over the hardship. Bearing in mind, we got no help during that time at all. So we've seen through our years of being in the pub, which is 30, it's a family-run pub, it was my mum and dad's. We've seen peaks and troughs, and the peaks always get us out the troughs. And even then it did. But this is just a complete, we can't see where it's going, which is really scary as a business owner. And I'm not the only one. I know people who are my colleagues and people I know who run businesses, they all say the same. The hospitality, the retail, it's all getting hit, and it's scary for the future.
I have a godson who's in exactly the same business as you and does it in Manchester, and got through the coronavirus phase, but it is now trying to rebuild the business. Let me ask you this finally. Is there anything that's at the back of your mind as a tax-paying citizen of this great country of ours, but also a woman trying to run a business and make a profit and employ staff? Is there anything other than the VAT and the business rate stuff that you think yourself might help? And if the Chancellor of the Exchequer picked up the blower to you or came in for a pint, that you could say to him or her, this is what you want to do and you want to do it now, otherwise you're going to lose the Liverpool pub?
Basically, mainly stop the scaremongering, because we've already got consumer nervousness. People aren't coming out because they're thinking, I need to save that money because come October, I'm not going to be able to heat or eat or whatever it is. The centralisation of it needs to stop, because that's not doing us any favours at all. And for Boris and his government, well, the next government, just think about the small sole traders and small businesses. We haven't got a big conglomerate behind us. We haven't got a lot of money behind us. And try and put something in place for us right now.
Yeah. That's a really important distinction there at the end. And I'm just going to agree with your final point, Paula, and thank you for making it, because when my friend Liam Halligan and I were covering this story yesterday on GB News, Liam said, we really haven't got to scare people. We've really got to try and keep it calm and sensible, because if we scare them, it'll just make it worse. You are 100% on the money. And next time in Liverpool, I'll pop in and see you if I can.
Make sure you do. Thanks for Guinness.
Thanks for breaking into your day and talking to us. A real pleasure. Paula Billingsley there, the co-owner of the Liverpool pub in Liverpool. And if you're in that neck of the woods, pop in and have a pint with her. It's business. She deserves to keep going. Great woman. As always, we do try to keep up with what's going on in Ukraine as well. We think that it matters, and we know that many of you do as well. It's costing us a lot of money. And as Boris Johnson reminded us on Wednesday, not just through defence spending, but also in higher energy bills. As Nigel and Frederick both said in those emails I read out a moment ago, Putin is as much in the frame for the energy crisis that you and I are facing right now. Joining me live in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is a really good friend of mine and someone who's been very loyal to this programme as well, for which we greatly appreciate, Robert Fox, the defence editor at the Evening Standard. What did you make of that visit by Johnson on his way out, Zelensky desperate to have him there? Why did he do it?
Well, it's very much the old Boris I knew and sat opposite at the Daily Telegraph. Bit of a performer, bit of a put it on. But funny enough, do you remember about Holly Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany's? She wasn't really a phony, because she was really phony about the things that she was phony about. Actually, Boris really believes in things like that. Yes, we heard the Churchillian rhetoric. It was a performance, but it wasn't a hollow performance. Actually, in a funny way, it's one of the things he really cares about. I think it's something in the family history, and he will be following this through.
Yeah, but when you said, I only butt in for clarity, because you mean he really believes that sovereign states are entitled to be defended and that democracy overrules tyranny?
That's right. Yeah. And what Boris was saying, and it's supported by his former editor, my editor, former editor too, we have our differences, but superb piece in the Telegraph by Charles Moore today,
brilliant article,
saying this, that look, this isn't a quick fix. And what Boris and Charles are saying, if you stopped it now, OK, we surrender. We'll serve up Zelensky as a sacrificial lamb. Oh, that'll turn on the cheap gas. That is not what's going to happen. That's what Gerhard Schröder, former Chancellor of Germany, working on his old pupil, Mr. Scholz, seemed to be saying, oh, can't we get Nord Stream, not 1 working properly, Nord Stream 2, but let's get the new Nord Stream 2 working. It's not going like that because of the way Putin has moved. Yeah. Putin is the centre of the problem at the moment. There always was going to be a problem over gas and gas supplies globally, but he has made it acute.
The flip side of that coin, then, is clearly Zelensky, because I buy into 100% what you described about what Boris really believes in and why it mattered to him. It was very crucial, even in Zelensky's eyes, that this mattered to him. And it was he who said in the last 48 hours, we've got to ask folk to hang on in there behind us and not lose the message simply because we've lost our friend Boris Johnson.
Zelensky is another tremendous communicator. That's the thing. He's one of these people, as I said, he's like Gina Lollobrigida and Elizabeth Taylor back in the day. The camera really loves him, and he knows about that. And he feels he's keeping it on. He slightly exceeds himself. We're hearing a bit of tension between him and his commanders. And I'll give you a for instance. He is banging on, and the West, I think, have done this too much about there must be a counter-offensive on Kherson. No, the military critics are saying don't harbour, husband your resources. If you go for a big counter-attack on Kherson, you may really blow away valuable assets. I just park that. But why Boris connects, particularly with Zelensky, is that he connects with the people of Kiev. Actually, they respond to him on the streets. A warm character. This is why the show is actually not insubstantial. It's part of the substance of keeping morale going.
You've been covering these things with huge authority for a long, long time. And what you've just said there was a penny that hadn't dropped upon me up to now, that in what is one of the most ghastly conflicts post-45 in Europe, is being led, or until for the next few days, a brilliant, witty stand-up comic of a journalist who ended up being Prime Minister, and a genuine stand-up comic actor who ended up being President of his country. I mean, if you wrote that as a novel, Robert Fox, it would be rejected by your editor.
Well, it's very much part of the story, because we really do have to look at the information war. And there's been a lot of rather fanciful stuff. Oh, we're going into the metaverse. It's avatars, it's what's going on in social media. True. But this is what I'm in discussion about with the practitioners, that only works if it relates to reality. And this is with the problem with Putin propaganda. For the people who've grown up on state television in Russia, I gather it still works. They've always taken the line from the Kremlin. But once you get below 30, below 25, but those are the people he needs to recruit. And by the way, it wasn't picked up. Why did Putin announce that he was going to add 137,000 new soldiers to the Russian army? You'll start for 10, as they used to say, or as Mr. Paxman used to say.
Yes.
What is the answer? That is the maximum quota in the 6-monthly conscription draft. There is conscription, there is a draft in Russia. Most of those conscripts go to the security service, the military police, the police agencies, the paramilitaries. Only a small amount go to the army in some form. But he breaks the law on 2 counts if he puts those conscripts into the army for combat beyond the borders of Russia. That breaks the rules, the law of conscription.
But the final point...
But it also means why he is doing this is trying to build an army, and I don't think there's anything in numbers in Russia now anymore. It's blown, is because he wants to avoid a general mobilisation. If he is forced to a general mobilisation, I think then he is in big, big trouble, particularly with his own securitate around him, his securitocracy.
Because they want the extra numbers. They don't want them going.
They want something to work, but they don't want this guy.
But OK, I'm being told we have to move on.
Sorry,
No. My fault for asking long questions. But final, and really brief. But the 137,000 that he wants, however it rubs up the Securitat the wrong way, means that he knows he's in trouble militarily and he needs to bolster his position.
And it won't work because he hasn't got the trainers. And he hasn't got the equipment. They're bringing old equipment in the line. They've blown over 30% of their artillery stock and ammunition in under 6 months. The total that Russia has. And it gets older and older and older and older.
Wisdom as ever, and a brilliant point about the 2 unexpected characters at the heart of this conflict.
They gelled.
Keep in touch, Robert. Love to have you back on as soon as possible. Thank you very much indeed. Robert Fox there, the defence editor of the Evening Standard. We've got just over half an hour to go, but we've got plenty more still to come in that half hour here on Alastair Stewart and Friends. After the break, we'll be going live to our reporter in Liverpool to find out the latest on the tragic murder of Olivia Platt-Corbell and its very dramatic news. But first, let's bring you up to date with the weather.
So looking ahead then to this afternoon, in the UK is looking pretty much like this. Showery for many. Some bright or sunny spells, though, in between those showers. Let's home in on the detail. Starting off in northern Scotland, a few showers around, but those fairly scattered. Western parts of Scotland may have fewer showers with more sunshine. Far eastern parts of Northern Ireland should still largely be fine around mid-afternoon. Further west, clouds spilling in with a little rain. Scattered showers developing across northwest England. Most of those light, although watch out for a few heavier bursts at times. Sunny spells, though, between the showers. And a scattering of showers also likely across Wales, although here they will be less frequent. Still the chance of a few heavy showers in Wales over hills and mountains. And a similar picture further east around the Midlands. Here, let's expect some sunny breaks, then a scattering of showers developing. Temperatures in the mid-20s, feeling pleasant though in the sunshine. And in East Anglia, a different story. Sunshine limited for some, with the odd thick cloud lingering, although it will be drier and less showers developing. Towards the Solent, an afternoon of sunny spells and a few showers, similar to elsewhere. Showers mostly light, but some heavier ones are possible. So those showers dying out this evening, a dry night for most of us, though rain in the far northwest. And that's how the showery weather is shaping up for the UK today.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Just after 1:30, let's get you up to date with the latest news headlines. And the Chancellor has warned middle-income earners could struggle to pay their energy bills this winter, saying he's concerned about those who aren't on benefits. Speaking to the Daily Telegraph newspaper, Nadeem Zahawi said people earning around £45,000 a year may need government support. That comes after Ofgem announced an 80% hike in the energy price cap to over £3,500 from October. In other news today, police investigating the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool say silence is not an option. They're appealing for more help now from the public. That's after they released a video showing a man being arrested in the Huyton area of the city on suspicion of murder. A second man who was detained yesterday is also being questioned. A memorial ride is being held today at the US Embassy in London, marking the 3rd anniversary of the death of Harry Dunn. The 19-year-old was killed when his motorbike collided with a car which was allegedly being driven on the wrong side of the road. American Anne Sakoulas was charged with causing death by dangerous driving, but was allowed to leave the country because she had diplomatic immunity. Harry's family say they miss him terribly. And motorists are facing traffic chaos this bank holiday. The AA has issued an amber warning for the weekend, saying an estimated 15 million trips are expected over the next couple of days. It's only the second time the alert's ever been issued, indicating extreme traffic congestion. A car that was once owned by Princess Diana is being auctioned today. The black Ford Escort RS Turbo was driven by the Princess from 85 to 88. Last June, another Ford Escort used by Diana sold for £52,000. Silverstone Auctions says the vehicle's being offered with no reserve price. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, where now it's time to go back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Polly, thank you very much indeed. Merseyside police have released aerial footage of the moment that armed officers arrested a 36-year-old man on suspicion of the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell. A second man has since been arrested. The 9-year-old, as I'm sure you know, was tragically shot in her home on Monday night after a gunman chased another man into her home in the Dovecote area of the city. Well, joining me now live from Liverpool is Sophie Reaper, GB News' Northwest reporter. Sophie, can you bring us right up to date with where we are in the investigation and what's happening where you are?
Yes, so it's been 5 days now since 9-year-old schoolgirl Olivia Pratt-Corbell was killed in her family home. 2 men have been arrested on suspicion of her murder and on 2 counts of attempted murder. The first we heard was a 36-year-old man had been arrested yesterday during a police raid that was in Liverpool's Huyton area. A little later in the afternoon we heard a 33-year-old man from Dovecot had been arrested, and that was on Lunsford Road. That's just a 3-minute drive from where I am here on Kingsheath Avenue, where the attack took place on Monday night. Now, as part of a wider appeal for information, Merseyside Police took to social media this morning asking people to help with the case. They said, a simple request, share this far and wide to everyone you know and ask them to share it further still so that there's no hiding place for anyone involved in the murder of little Olivia. We need names. Silence is not an option. Now, here at the crime scene, we're still seeing the community band together. We're seeing people come with flowers, teddies, balloons, all in memory of the little girl. And a little earlier, I asked 2 members of the community exactly how it's been affecting them.
My deepest condolences to Olivia's family, because I'm really thinking about them at this time.
You mentioned the impact it'll have on the children. How do you think the children, but also the wider community, are going to cope with?
They're not going to cope because when them kids go back to school, whoever was in Olivia's class, my great niece was mate with her cousin and associate. So when them kids go back to school, there's going to be that empty space where Olivia's at, and them kids won't be able to cope.
Well, the murder investigation continues here. A little earlier, we saw the front door from Olivia's house being carried away for further forensic examination. And Merseyside Police say they are absolutely determined to do whatever it takes. They say they will leave no stone unturned to find the person behind the murder that has absolutely rocked this community to its very core.
Sophie, thank you very much indeed. Always a tremendously difficult story, but brilliantly told and sensitively told. Thank you very much indeed. And keep in touch with us. Sophie Reaper there, GB News' Northwest reporter. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, with plenty more still to come in our final half hour. Good Causes is back, and this is one very close to my heart. Spectropolis. Pay It Forward is a celeb-backed charitable project dedicated to those with autism and those who support them. We'll be finding out all about their Sleep Under the Stars campaign after this break.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back, 20 to 2. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News. We've spoken in depth today regarding the energy crisis after Britain's energy industry regulator Ofgem confirmed an 80% increase in the consumer price cap from October. It'll take a typical household's gas and electricity bill to over £3,500 a year. Millions of households are now left to brace for a winter of discomfort and possibly a winter of discontent as well. So I wanted to give our final say to a good friend of this programme and a guy I genuinely admire, Kevin Hollinrake, who's the Conservative Member of Parliament for Thirsk and Moulton and is also, importantly, a member of the Treasury Select Committee. Thanks for fitting us into your afternoon, sir. Always a pleasure to see you.
Alistair. No problem.
Do you sense that we are back to a fairly fundamental debate, and no bad thing for it, between the free marketeers and the state control side?
Yeah, I think that's very well put. I think that there is a real debate going on right now between those two different camps. You know, of course, you can cut taxes and just leave the market to its own devices and leave people to their own devices. That's not the way we generally run our country. We provide support for people on lowest incomes, people who have difficulty increasing their income, or pensioners, these kind of people. We always provide more support for those people. That's what Rishi Sunak, right from the start, who I support for the leadership contest, is saying we should do. I think inevitably that will be the case, because the impact on those households, those lowest income households, will be so severe. It is fair to say that everybody will need some help. And I agree with what the Chancellor said this morning. Even people seemingly on quite high incomes will need help as well. And that's what has been promised, delivered in the past, and what will be delivered in the future, I believe. But ultimately, the most important support we can provide is to those people who really are already struggling to make ends meet.
Sure, and I totally agree with you about what Nadeem said, and if people want to look at it in more detail, it's in the Telegraph, and it is a significant intervention, but it is elsewhere. Earlier in the programme, we had Julian Jessop on, who is an independent economic analyst now, but is a former Treasury man. He used to work there as one of the boffins. And I found what was really interesting, and you very honestly just said there, you've supported Rishi all the way through. You and I have talked about it on many occasions. Julian said what this country needs right now is the best of Rishi economic pitch and the best of Liz's economic pitch, because neither one nor the other is 100% right. And when this is all over, bang heads together. That's the job perhaps of the new Chancellor. But there's good in both. Do you agree with that?
Well, actually, I do, to be honest. I mean, I think, we should all be willing to learn from each other. Nobody has a monopoly on all the right ideas. So I think we should listen to either different viewpoint, and indeed the opposition viewpoint. And some of the stuff they come out with is relevant. So I think we should be willing to do that. My position on this is most of the problems we are seeing today in our economy are economic problems. So actually having somebody at the helm who's most experienced in terms of being in the Treasury, solving the past economic problems, and let's remember we've already put about £1,200 a year into those lowest income households, which completely offset the cost of energy prior to this latest increase in the energy cap. The person there was Rishi Sunak. So he knows the levers to pull. He knows how to pull them in the right directions. And I believe he'll deliver that package of support because he's got the experience to do that. It's not just about ideology, it's experience, which I think is absolutely vital right now.
OK, and purely for the purposes of balance, and I will remind folk listening to our conversation that Liz was number 2 in the Treasury as well. So they've both got some experience, but you're absolutely right. Hands-on and at the top, most recent, Rishi Sunak, you're absolutely right. Which takes me to my final point. During the lockdowns, and I don't want to get into a debate about those because that's explosive stuff, as we all know. But during that lockdown, I talked to a brilliant publican from Liverpool earlier on about how she was facing up to this energy energy crisis, there was a lot of help, whether it was furlough or loans or the rest of it, to the small business sector. We had a former chair of the Federation of Small Businesses on the programme this morning, Kevin, saying, what about us? If we're not helped on energy prices and input costs, we're going to go broke. That means unemployment. That means catastrophe. Whoever wins has really got to get a grip on the small business sector, as well as you, me and every other citizen.
100%. I mean, I spent 30 years in business prior to coming into Parliament. I totally agree with that. I'm an SME person through and through. Most of the businesses I speak to in my constituency, they're facing energy cost increases of fourfold increases, bills going from 100,000 a year to 600,000 a year, and they're just not making that much profit, and they're laden with debt because of the crisis. So ultimately, I think we will step in and provide support for SMEs. We absolutely have to. Otherwise, two things will happen. Number one, those businesses will put prices up, which will feed inflation, which is bad. And even worse than that, by many of them will go bust. That's the reality. They can't afford to carry that extra cost. So yes, SMEs need help too.
Good. Kevin, always a pleasure to talk to you. Keep in touch, and anytime you're welcome. Thank you very much indeed. Kevin Hollingake there, Tory MP for Thurston Moulton, but also member of the Treasury Select Committee, with a loud and clear message, be it Rishi or be it Liz. You've got to help the small business sector as well. Finally, I get asked to do quite a lot for good causes, and I always help where I can. But one came up the other day that just bowled me over. It's called Spectropolis, and it was a project to get folks like me and much more famous people than me simply to read books for children with autism, and children whose friends may well have autism or other physical and mental challenges. I grabbed it with both hands, as I'm very proud to say did the great Michael Sheen, the lovely Carol Vorderman, and many others. And the Spectropolis Sleep Under the Stars campaign starts today. So I'm delighted to say that I am thrilled that the force behind it, teacher Claire Prosser, there she is in the middle, joins me live now. And on the right-hand side of your screen is Claire Christensen, who is a mum to a child with autism. So, Claire in the middle, let me start with you, if I may. What is autism? For those out there kind enough to listen to us and watch us, they hear it bandied around, but they don't necessarily know what it is. What is it?
So it's a neurodevelopmental condition which just shapes the kind of, the development of the brain, really. Lots of children and adults on the spectrum will have difficulties with social interaction, social communication, sensory processing differences, their interactions and their play may be quite fixed. So they have lots of challenges that they face on a daily basis, and the families and the professionals who support them. So we really wanted to set up a list to be able to offer information and robust information as well. Yeah, because
the book reading bit's brilliant, and draw attention to it, and the festival is even more important because it is about educating folk and helping folk deal with it. And therefore the woman televisually on your left, on the right of the screen, is my perfect next witness. Claire, what is it like bringing up a child with autism? We all love our children, whatever they get up to, whatever they do, but it is an extra challenge. Share with us what it's like being mum to a child with autism. Oh, we've lost her for a moment. I'm going to ask the team urgently to get back. Oh, she's gone black. But so let's carry on with Claire in the middle. Now, Claire, on the right-hand side of your screen, the founder. I'm sorry, bear with me a moment. Is she back or not? She is. Oh, thank you, Claire Christian. So we lost you there for a moment. I'm sorry. I just asked you what it's like bringing up a child with autism.
It's amazing. It's my son is absolutely fabulous. Yeah, that's the main thing. It does have lots of challenges. Behaviours in school, some behaviours at home, but it's an interesting journey to be on.
And are the teachers good? Do they embrace what you're doing and what your child is up to?
We've had some amazing teachers at my son's school who have really been on board. My son's had some fabulous TAs who've done different things with him. We're now changing over from a mainstream setting to a specialist setting, just because it was felt that that would be a better place to meet Jake's needs. But yeah, so some teachers are absolutely brilliant. So it's a kind of mix. We have been fairly lucky.
Yeah. No, I mean that I know that from having been a supporter of Scope for a long time on the mental health side of things. That debate whether people with such challenges should be in mainstream schools or should be in special schools is a very vibrant debate, and it does split communities. Claire in the middle. Let me come back to you, Claire Prosser. One of the things, because we had a long chat on the phone about it, that really got me about this campaign is that it isn't only for children like Claire Christensen's children. It's also for other children to learn to understand. That was the book that I recorded for you, is about just understanding it. And they're not all weird and spooky, they're just different.
Yeah, I think really what we want to do, our aim is to have as much information available to everybody, including friends, including siblings, professionals, anybody who wants to learn about autism. We welcome you to come and get some information from us, because there are some really, really great books out there written by autistic authors, by authors who've researched autism for a very long time, who know a lot about it, written by parents and autistic people themselves, So if we can get that information out there, we want to be able to do it. And that's really why we want to fundraise, so that we can purchase more books and support more people to understand autism and all of its wonder and challenge as well.
And the other crucial thing, sticking with Claire Prosser for a moment, then I'm going to come back to Claire Christensen. And again, you talked to my daughter, who everybody who watches this programme knows is a teacher. And she was the first who said to me, "Oh, read it out loud. That's absolutely brilliant." Because some children, to sit down there and read a book is itself challenging, but also to spend the time it takes to sit down. I can see Claire Christensen nodding with agreement. But Claire Prosser, first of all, so that they can sit down and just listen to a tape is gold dust.
Definitely. I think reading can be a challenge for lots of reasons, whether it be, literacy skills, whether it be that a child struggles to sit and process all of the information within a text. There are lots of other challenges that come with autism that make reading difficult sometimes, So if we can record them and they can watch and they can listen, then great. We want to try and make it as accessible as we can.
Just
we also have... Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, because we feed this stuff out on television and on radio, and there's an absolutely hideous picture on the screen at the moment, which is moi. But before that, the lineup was awesome. We started with the great Martin Sheen, who to me will always be Tony Blair, but he's an absolutely brilliant actor and a lovely guy as well. Michael Sheen, rather, beg your pardon. And then Carol Vorderman and several others. Well done you for doing it. Claire Christensen, pick up, if you will, on that crucial point, because I noticed when I put the question to Claire Prosser, you were nodding in agreement. Your child, if you say, "Right, darling, it's time to..." No, she's gone again.
Oh, no. I'm still here.
No, well, they will get back to me. They will get back to me if they can, because I do want to ask her to share with us what that experience is like, because it is a real one. We've got a couple of minutes left, Claire Prosser. I'm going to be completely candid and a tart, if you will. I'm going to give you a minute to tell us about the big event. If people turn up or get in touch or plug in or follow you online, what do they get other than listening to the readings by people like Carol and me and Clem?
Yeah, certainly. So the main project itself is called Spectropolis Pay It Forward, and we donate autism-related health and wellbeing books to people on the spectrum, to professionals, to family members, to siblings, to friends, and really with the aim of putting as much information out there as possible. And the reason why we have the pay it forward aspect is that we ask for people to share that information within their community, with people they know. We love that beautiful ripple effect that happens when people become empowered and have knowledge and they want to share it with others. And then each year we run a fundraising event. We've held a variety of fundraising events, including walking Pen y Fan Mountain 10 times in 24 hours, walking 100 kilometres of the Gower coastline. And then last year, because of COVID, we started the Sleep Under the Stars project, because we felt it was something that people could do to make memories, to have fun, to get the books out there, to get information out there in a more accessible way.
You're a total star, Claire Prosser, and I'm thrilled to say Claire Christensen is now also back. Just wave if you can hear. Yeah, that's pretty much. Okay, you've got slightly less than a minute to tell me what it's like to sit down with your child and listen to someone like Carol Vorderman reading a story rather than trying to persuade them to hold the book and go through it. This is the final minute of the programme.
Okay, so it can make a massive difference. You know, to get my child to sit still is a challenge in itself. So having something audio and something he can kind of listen to while either kind of doing other stuff or kind of just trying to calm down at the end of the night makes a huge difference. And the work that Claire does with Septropolis is absolutely fantastic. She has been amazing in supporting us as a family, and the legacy of kind of paying it forward is just fantastic. So, you know, if anyone can support Claire, then please do.
You're both brilliant, and thank you very much indeed for breaking into your afternoon to talk to us. Claire Christensen in the stripy top, Claire Prosser in the green top. Thank you both very much indeed, and the best of luck, Claire Prosser, with the entire project. You keep in touch with me. I want to see how it goes. Bless you. So there we are. That's it. Alastair Stewart and friends. God, I'm blessed with my friends. Ending on a real high. If you've got children, isn't it the most wonderful thing in the world? If you've got children with a few challenges, do you know what? It can still be the most wonderful thing in the world. A very good afternoon to you. I'm back at 12 tomorrow. Until then, have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
So looking ahead then to this afternoon in the UK is looking pretty much like this. Showery for many. Some bright or sunny spells, though, in between those showers. Let's home in on the detail. Starting off in northern Scotland, a few showers around, but those fairly scattered. Western parts of Scotland may have fewer showers with more sunshine. Far eastern parts of Northern Ireland should still largely be fine around mid-afternoon. Further west, clouds spilling in with a little rain. Scattered showers developing across northwest England. Most of those light, although watch out for a few heavier bursts at times. Sunny spells, though, between the showers. And a scattering of showers also likely across Wales, although here they will be less frequent. Still the chance of a few heavy showers in Wales over hills and mountains. And a similar picture further east around the Midlands. Here, let's expect some sunny breaks, then a scattering of showers developing. Temperatures in the mid-20s, feeling pleasant though in the sunshine. And in East Anglia, a different story. Sunshine limited for some, with the odd thick cloud lingering, although it will be drier and less showers developing. Towards the Solent, an afternoon of sunny spells and a few showers, similar to elsewhere. Showers mostly light, but some heavier ones are possible. So those showers dying out this evening, a dry night for most of us, though rain in the far northwest. And that's how the showery weather is shaping up for the UK today.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs